What's up, guys? I'm going to give you 3 different things that dropshipping gurus do not tell you about direct response, about marketing, about ultimately ad creatives that, for example, this screenshot that I've gotten yesterday from one of the brand owners I've been working with, just basically at 3-4 p.m. already at a $7,000 a day. So absolutely insane case studies that we've been producing recently, and I want to give to you guys the entire process. I'm going to start actually with understanding direct response. This is actually the very first thing that no one really talks about, no one really tells you, and this is what kind of separates just ripping stuff and just praying that it works, hoping to actually then having a system behind it and scaling to really high numbers. And so it comes down understanding direct response marketing, right? So like basically showing them an ad and directly wanting them to do whatever you want them to do, which is buying in this case, right, in e-com. And so there's 3 different subcategories of things that you have to understand and implement. First one is disqualifiers, second one is isolation, and the third one is the elements of direct response that you have to basically implement. And so when it comes to disqualifiers, a disqualifier in your ad is essentially there for you to play around with the balance between the conversion rate and the click-through rate. Because you can imagine it like this: the best ad is not the one which has the best click-through rate or the best only conversion rate only, right? But you have to understand the best ad is that has the best balance on a very high budget, very high scale between conversion rate and click-through rate, right? Whenever these two stay balanced, that's when an ad is a winning ad usually. Because when you have a pretty good click-through rate and a pretty good conversion rate, usually that's when you scale, right? And then it breaks again, and then you optimize to have the balance again. So that's what you really iterate on, just so you know. However, when it comes to disqualifiers, these are things that you either add in when you have a low conversion rate problem, or remove when you have a low click-through rate problem. And you can always give up a little bit of one to have more of the other, meaning you can give up a little bit of the click-through rate, make the CPC higher, so you're going to pay more per click. It's going to be fewer people that ultimately click through, but the ones that do actually convert significantly higher. But you can also do it the opposite way. You can give up a little bit of the conversion rate by removing these disqualifiers that I'll walk you through, and then also getting a lower CPC, meaning a higher click-through rate. And once again, you can create this balance inside of your ads to have this much more systemizable and really just plannable approach inside of your ad account. And so what are the disqualifiers, right? Disqualifiers are, for example, a call out in the beginning of your ad. So in the hook, right, we have deeper pain digging, we have price and offer reveals. Obviously, think about it: if someone knows what the price is and still decides to click, there's nothing to be surprised about. Then we have commitments, we have effort framing, we have future benefits. So essentially commitments is basically already framing how kind of like it's going to be structured. Okay, so what's the time delay, for example, of them reaching the dream outcome? You basically give away all the parts of the value equation of each offer. For example, even like the little things like, for example, the perceived likelihood of achievement, essentially, that they can expect, right? What is the dream outcome in the first place? And especially also like the time delay. Then we have effort framing. So how much will they have to do and how much work will they have to put in so that they reach this dream outcome? Again, these are all things that make your ad longer. And if you have these things inside of your ad, what's going to happen is they're going to convert better, right? Because the ones that do click through actually resonate with it a lot, and they have nothing to be surprised about. In fact, you take away their fears and their objections. However, it's going to be ultimately fewer people that click through. Okay. Then we have future benefits, long-term benefits. This is a big thing, especially for whenever you have some type of unique mechanism that they've never heard of, right? And then we have objection handling. So these are all kind of disqualifiers. Once again, all things that you can either add in if you have a low conversion rate and struggling with that, or remove your ad if you're struggling with low CPCs. And that's when you can create this balance between click-through rate and conversion rate inside of your ad account. Okay, really important. Now, the second thing is essentially that you isolate your ads, and every part of the marketing, every part of the stuff that you test should have been tested first, isolated in its own unique way, and at some point you should just be like basically looking at a spreadsheet and just throwing together variables, and that's how you should create a winning ad. And so a lot of people don't do this. What a lot of people in fact do is they just basically do a normal random creative test, have no clue about what they're testing, what the goal of the test is, what the purpose of the test is, and then just pray that something works. And even to top everything off, probably all the content is just ripped, and so that's when everything fails. And and obviously it's already programmed to fail. Now, what I like to do is I like to start with something called the hook test, which is essentially just that you test image ads that look like this, white background, just text on it. And essentially the point of this is that you figure out which hooks have a really good click-through rate. You're just going to spend like $2 to $3 each. You're going to test a bunch of these, maybe like 30. You're going to only do them like this, and you're going to test how do they do basically isolated, right? So without anything on them. And so then we're just essentially going to take the best click-through rate ones, at least 7% usually, and put those on the actual ads. And so the second thing that you're going to isolate once your hooks are actually winning, and once you have a couple winning hooks, maybe just one, then you're going to isolate the concept, and you're going to test the concept, because that's the next important thing that you can test. And so what is that really going to look like? Well, you have UGCs, you have VSLs, you have, even within both these is a lot of concepts, especially for example VSLs. We have the more experienced UGC based VSLs, we have more like educational salesy VSLs, and then within that we have founder ads, we have for example podcast style or whatever, and then also with the UGC one. So there's a bunch of different sub concepts. Same thing with static ads, right? So image ads, you have a bunch of different ones. You have more aware ones for more like higher awareness stages. For example, you can have offer focused ones, you can have comparison ones. Examples for those would be like us versus them ones, solution based, problem based. But then also, like on the other hand, you can have news article static ads, you can have problem visuals, right? So really just unaware stuff, and you can once again play around with stuff that converts better or stuff that has a better click-through rate. And like you said, it's you're gonna notice this pattern throughout this entire video that I make here. It's the same exact thing. You always just want to have the balance between click-through rate and then conversion rate, and the ad is supposed to hold that balance on a high spend. That's what a winning ad looks like inside of an ad account, okay? And then step number 3 is the iterations, okay? And so that's exactly what I just said here. What we've just talked about, all the isolation stuff and all the disqualifier stuff so far, doesn't matter at all if you don't properly iterate, because the first couple of tests aren't going to be good. Now, if you after every test decide on, to move on to a completely different concept, or even worse, right, how a lot of dropshippers do it, to a completely different product and just blame the product and blame everything but yourself, then what's going to happen realistically is you're never going to make any concept work, and you're never actually going to turn a concept into a winning concept, because you can just look at the metrics. That's the cool part, right? You have 2 eyes and you have an ad account, and the ad account is actually spitting out metrics when you spend money, and that's what we're doing. We're media buying, we're buying data, okay? So that's the cool part, meaning what you can do is you can look exactly, do you have more of a conversion rate issue, or do you have more of a click-through rate issue, or a CPC issue? And then you can just make these iterations, isolate the stuff, and actually behind every test and every single time that you research and behind every single time that you test something, you should have a goal. You should know exactly, what am I testing here? And then all of a sudden, when you ask yourself, okay, what am I even testing here? That's when you start to think in the right direction, because that's when you make plans, that's when you build your systems, blah, blah, blah. And that's when usually things start to work out, okay? Now, elements, right? So what are elements of direct response? These are not disqualifiers. These are here, like I've put your list of things here that are just things that you can implement into your ads that will just essentially create more urgency and create more, this willpower to buy immediately, okay? And these are metaphors, simplicity, authenticity, specificity, urgency, curiosity, social proof and normal proof, comparisons, and authorities, and so on. So these are all things that people want to hear and see, and these are those things that increase the likelihood that anyone basically buys. Metaphors obviously being like, kind of speak in pictures. Simplicity, try to showcase it that it's as easy as possible to achieve the dream outcome that you kind of promise. Obviously we have authenticity, right? So like actually being real, speaking the language and showing relatable content. Then we have specificity, so always include specific numbers, be very, very clear and show competence, right? Then we have urgency, then we have curiosity that you have to create it. We have proof and social proof. We have comparisons, that's a very powerful one. And then we have authorities, and there's a couple more, okay? So these are just things that are not disqualifiers. You can't have enough of these, and you should always try to have this as a checklist. Does my ad have this? Does my ad have that? And you can just make your ads better like that. They're going to work better if you have these things, okay? You're going to watch the performance go up, essentially. Cool. So now, Now that we have a basic understanding of how direct response marketing really works, now what we need to figure out is how do we put the systems and the team structure in place so that you don't have to work inside of your business forever, right? This might be a little bit controversial, might be a little bit of a new perspective that you hear now, because everyone always tells you to, okay, well, you're a one-man show when you're a dropshipping guy and you have 10 stores and you're so cool. You don't have to do that though. And in fact, if you want to sell your store at some point, you shouldn't work in your business forever. And so how do we, now that we have an understanding, and likely this is already probably enough to get you to a very decent scale, how do we now put the systems in place so that this works without you and the business even grows without you, even though it's your business? Okay. Now, we basically focus on two things: talent acquisition and the testing order. And so I'm going to walk you through what that really does or means or is, okay? So the talent acquisition funnel specifically is a completely separate funnel that works just like the normal new customer funnel. The goal is to have people directly respondingly join into some type of funnel and leave some type of contact information or money or whatever, and you just want to be able to contact them, and the goal is just different, okay? So the talent acquisition funnel, the main purpose of it is to have employees in your business, a player recruiting, so that you basically can relax and people take care of stuff for you, and you just pay them money for it. I know it's crazy, right? You can hire people, but the thing is, a lot of dropshippers, a lot of beginners, especially in e-com, don't even think about that. So there's basically three really powerful ways. These are my favorite ways to get talent and to get employees. We have paid ads, paid ad acquisition funnels. We have job posts, obviously, and then we have poaching. Okay, so poaching, got to be a little bit more careful with that. You can get into legal trouble. It's the hardest method, but usually has the best people, right? So if you know the best creative strategist that you ever spoken to in your life, right? If you know it, then what you can do is just walk up to him and say, hey, whatever you're getting paid right now, I'm gonna pay you double. Right? And if the other guy doesn't have a non-compete, you can just switch to your business and boom, you can crush it with him. Now, second thing, job post. Obviously, job post is going to be a little bit more generic, and it's going to be a little bit lower of the quality of people that come through. However, what you have to understand is you basically have no friction in a job post at all, and so you're going to get a bunch of people immediately. So it's the cheapest form of getting leads into your talent acquisition funnel. Why? Because these people are actively reaching out to you. It's called inbound. It's called people actively reaching out, and it's called basically having as little friction as possible so that the volume is as big as possible. Then you have a huge variety of people to pick from. And now there's little tips and optimization hacks, like for example, hopping on an interview call with every single one that comes through, and there's going to be a lot of them, and asking, hey, who's the best XYZ that you know? And then hopping on a call with that guy and then asking him again, who's the best XYZ guy that you know? And you do this until you work your way up to getting the best of the best guys on the interview, until that guy doesn't know anyone who's better than himself. And so then that's the guy that you hire. Okay, so there's cool hacks with job posts like this. And job posts, even though they're more generic on Upwork, on Twitter, or whatever, they can still work really well, especially for lower leverage tasks. So like video editing, graphic design, content creator management, stuff like that. And then we have paid acquisition funnels here, okay? So paid acquisition funnel, in terms of talent acquisition funnels, right, is something which is just specific ads in a specific funnel, specific landing page for just people, right? So for employees, now that we understand how to do that for direct response for customers, you should also understand how to do this properly for employees. Make ad creatives actually showcasing these elements of direct response. Metaphors, right? Like, speaking pictures, simplicity, make the job as easy as possible. Authenticity, you guys are authentic, you guys, actually work together, it's a culture. Specificity, you're going to make this amount of money. Urgency, we only have 2 more positions available. Curiosity, social proof, all of our employees are happy, right? Comparison with other brands. So you can literally do this inside a paid acquisition funnel of your talents too. And this is something which not a lot of people talk about. And so then obviously this is something which is the most volume, because you pay for the volume, you pay for people to come in, meaning you can have a lot of friction, you can have a big disqualification process here. And so essentially what you should do here is actually have a whole, like, even like not a quiz, but at least some type of type form, some type of form that they have to go through, so you can basically disqualify that, maybe in a VSL of yours or something like that. Okay, and now that you've hired people, you're basically just going to go back and forth with this process here, which looks like this: test batch, training. You're going to train them. If they mess up, you hire someone else, test batch, and then you go to training them. And you do this until you have your A players in place, and you always hire whatever you need. Now, I've put the testing order here because I think this is super important when it comes to the systems specifically. So this has less to do with, you know, your team structure and what kind of people you hire, but this is actually more to do with your understanding of what to test in the first place. Because the higher up you are on this testing order, the bigger the impact of the test. And so there's like these more higher impact tests, and then there's like these medium impact tests, and then there's iterations, which are very small changes. And so what you should focus on, actually, if you're at a very low scale and you have barely anything to lose, then you should focus on being more up the testing order, actually having high impact tests and huge things that you test against each other. Now, the opposite would be the case, for example, whenever you're trying to, you know, iterate, whenever you already have stuff that works and you're just trying to make it better. And so we have product, we have the avatar, we have the angle, we have the concept, we have the hook, we have the body, we have the call to action, and there's a bunch of different, obviously, just like this is a surface level view. But you have to understand that I would say, you know, if you don't have anything that works right now, obviously we're not trying to switch from product to product, but what you're trying to do definitely is actually maybe focus on different avatars, because if you test 10 different avatars against each other, right, then it's going to have a higher impact than testing 10 creatives inside of one avatar. Okay, so this is the point I'm trying to make here, and I hope you get it. But yeah, let's talk about the last topic that I wanted to kind of mention here, which is actually that you have to and should forget the new customer ROAS. Okay, so what is the new customer ROAS? New customer ROAS is just what you guys probably look at in terms of what the ROAS is. So the Facebook ROAS, if people tell you, hey, I make this much money, usually they refer to the ROAS on Facebook. But you have to understand that a lot of very big brands are not operating on a very high new customer ROAS. In fact, a lot of them are operating on a quote unquote loss or break even, because they're making all the money back in other ways. And so first of all, recurring revenue. Second of all, going on my channel and having a funnel even for different channels. Yes, there's even stuff like that. And we have cash flow management that I've written down here. So monthly recurring revenue is obviously subscription offers, and overall just maximizing the lifetime value and the lifetime profit that you make from each customer. On my channel marketing is actually that you move away from depending only on your Facebook ROAS and kind of expanding onto other channels. And then the cash flow is actually one of the most important topics, because brands that don't have cash flow, they don't have anything. Okay, cash is king always. That was pretty much it for this video, guys. I want to say thank you so much for giving me your most important asset, which is your attention. Thank you for watching. I wish you a beautiful day.